Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 141. Interesting question today. What if Pontius Pilate wasn't the only one to blame? So join me for 7 minutes right now as we consider who to blame for the death of Jesus. Let's start in John chapter 18. I'm going to start in verse 28. Then they led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to the governor's headquarters. That's Pontius Pilate. It was early in the morning. They themselves did not enter the governor's headquarters so that they would not be defiled, but could eat the Passover. Verse 29. So Pilate went out to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" They answered him, "If this man were not doing evil, we would have not delivered him over to you." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." The Jews said to him, "It's not lawful for us to put anyone to death." So again, they're still heading towards trying to get Jesus to be killed. Verse 32. This was to fulfill the word that Jesus had spoken to show by what kind of death he was going to die. So today in this passage, the Romans get involved judicially. Now, perhaps they were involved militarily if some of that cohort who arrested Jesus was Roman soldiers. So physically now, they have moved. First they started in the Garden of Gethsemane, then to Annas' house, then to Caiaphas' palace, and now he's going to the Roman structures. And he meets up with Pontius Pilate. Now, who is he? He was a Roman governor of this area, in the Jerusalem area, Judea, and was appointed by Tiberius in 26 AD. So he'd been on the job for almost a decade or so, maybe 7 years, and he ruled until 36 AD, so a couple more years after this. Now, Josephus, a Jewish scholar and historian, writes that when he arrived, he brought images of Caesar with him, and this caused a big to-do there. Now, the idea here is that the Romans allowed kind of a liberal spiritual practice after they conquered a people. They had vigorous military jurisdiction, and then they kind of allowed people to keep their religion, but they would add Caesar, they would build a temple to Caesar, so they were involved in this worship of Caesar. So the first thing I'd like to just mention is that Pilate is a spiritual man. So don't forget, like all people, everybody's a spiritual person, and Pilate, no exception, is a spiritual person. Now, there's a strange verse in Luke chapter 13 where it says that there were some present at that time who told them about the Galileans whose blood Pilate had mingled with their sacrifices. So I think that means that Pilate was involved in some sort of pagan worship that required a blood sacrifice, and so he used the blood of Galileans. So from his point of view, he sacrifices, and this perhaps was the reason why he was at odds with Herod Antipas from Galilee. The crucifixion, as the account begins, it says that they were at enmity with each other. So first of all, Pilate is a spiritual man. Second of all, Pilate is a political man. So people in power generally want to stay in power. But everybody answers to somebody in authority structure, and the Jews have some power in their appeal. So if they go above Pilate and they appeal to their boss in Rome, this has some power. And in fact, they actually successfully did that at one previous point in his reign when they were protesting bringing in gilded shields into the house of Herod. The Jews actually won that battle. But when push comes to shove, Pilate agrees to have Jesus crucified after he is accused in John 19. Here's the accusation against Pilate. "If you release this man, you are no friend of Caesar." So here, despite John's and all the other gospel writers quoting Pilate's words and insistence that there's no evidence and Jesus was innocent, despite trying to wash his hands of the guilt, despite trying to have Jesus released, he still sends him for torture and then execution. So he refuses, then at the end, he gets a little impertinent and refuses to change the title on the cross, which said King of the Jews, when they said, oh, you should change it to, he said he was King of the Jews. So Pilate is a spiritual man. He's a political man. He's also a married man. So listen to this. Uh, it might be a little bit of an exaggeration to say, but I've heard this said before, that everything a man does is for the love of a woman. Well, the point is that Pilate was married and is perhaps influenced by his wife, who has a dream in Matthew 27:19. Besides, while he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him, quote, "Have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much of him today because of a dream." So Pilate is a married man. He's getting some voices from his wife. And then finally, Pilate is a mortal man. Now, there is some apocryphal literature that says that Pilate and his wife become Christians, though that is not very robustly documented. But if that was so, wouldn't it be amazing if Pilate was in heaven? Eusebius reports that Pilate ultimately dies by suicide. No matter what, the point is that either way, his life ends just like yours and mine, and he's going to be judged. Now, ironically, he is judged, he's going to be judged there for how we judge here, as we all are. How do we see things? What is our belief set? What does that belief set result in as far as behavior, worship, morality, and interaction with people, performance of our job? So similarly, we are all mortal people. All right, so speculate with me. Pilate causes Jesus to be crucified in some very direct way. He has a primary and a direct hand in the process. And we can sit in judgment, of course, of Pilate and have him be the target of our wrath. Hey, it's Pilate's fault. Well, here's what's unpalatable if you think just a little bit further. What if I were to tell you that you caused Jesus to be crucified, that you were the primary and direct cause because of your sin? So Jesus, write this down, Jesus had to pay an undeserved penalty under Pilate so that you could get off without penalty. And in that sense, you caused the crucifixion. I know it's foul tasting, like my attitudes of blame towards Pilate. I also have to take some of this on myself. And if that is you today, first blaming Pilate and then blaming yourself, then you are on the right track as we march towards Easter. Thank you for listening. Come back tomorrow.